Previously on After the Uprising.
Yes, I'm at 9640 Diamond Drive, and there's a car on fire in my parking lot.
Seals was found shot inside a burning car in Riverview on Diamond Drive.
I do know that there is a lot of sentiment in the community that they want justice, they want the truth.
You know, you still got a life that has a tab on it from your past endeavors, you know what I'm saying? I think he got set up by the people he was in the fucking music situation with.
Man, I ain't never seen Bruh sweat. It's like he wanted all the smoke.
I don't think music had anything to do with it at all. At all. Absolutely not. That was something that I've never heard.
He said a white boy came from out of the woods.
He said a guy with long hair and a ponytail.
A white boy. Next thing he know, the car was on fire.
Don't shoot! Don't shoot!
What you're looking at is the aftermath of the grand jury deciding not to indict officers.
29-year-old Darren Seals was murdered before his killer set his car on fire.
Once they put out the flames, they discovered Seals' body inside with a gunshot wound.
Pointed guns on me and my 14-year-old little brother, it's Ferguson PD. Grabbed me by my hair, slammed me out the car. He said you might want to pick your enemies better.
This is After the Uprising, Season 2, The Murder of Darren Seals.
I don't want to speculate anything. Like I said, the only thing I can tell you is we got a call for a car burning up, and the fire department came and was putting a fire out and discovered a body, and we turned it over to the county. But other than that, that's all I can tell you.
This is Jeffrey Dominguez, at the time chief of the Riverview Police Department. Riverview, if you recall, is the small municipality in St. Louis County where Darren's burned body and car were discovered. He is speaking with our producer, John Duffy, who only called to try to schedule an interview with the original responding officer who had since left the department, and that we couldn't locate. But then, Chief Dominguez just started dishing information right there on the phone.
You said the body was in the passenger side of the car?
You know what? I believe so. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it was in the passenger side of the vehicle. You know, because somebody had to drive that car up there, and of course he didn't because he was already deceased. So I think, what happens, something happened in the city, they drove the car up here to one of our apartment complexes, lit it on fire, and left.
And did they ever know where it came from, like where he actually was shot, or did you never hear about that?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, that's because, after we discovered that and turned it over to Crimes Against Persons from St. Louis County, I'm pretty sure St. Louis County discovered that the crime actually happened in the city, so that the city took over the investigation. So, there's a lot more to it than I can even begin to tell you.
Chief Dominguez indicated that the actual killing of Darren happened somewhere other than the parking lot where his body was found. This coincides with what the Ridgeview witness explained when he said he saw Darren's Jeep driven into the parking lot, followed by 2 other vehicles. Chief Dominguez's understanding is that Darren was actually killed somewhere in St. Louis City.
And having the fire department could even tell you better than I can, because they're the ones that put out the fire and discovered the body. So like I said, once the St. Louis County took over, you probably need to get to report and talk to like the city or county, because they're going to have way more information than I can tell you.
At the time of this call, we had already gotten a copy of the incident report on Darren's death from St. Louis County. What you need to remember is that Riverview is a very small municipality, with a small police department that isn't equipped to investigate homicides. So when they found that there was a body in the burning car on the night of Darren's death, they called in the St. Louis County Police, who could handle a murder investigation. What you also need to note is that an incident report is not the same thing as the final investigative report. The incident report is very basic and records information such as what time the 911 call was made, what the address of the incident was, the fact that there was a car fire, etc. It doesn't contain any investigative information. And the incident report we'd gotten was missing something else, something it usually would have contained, which was a list of the responding officers. That section was suspiciously absent. Why would that be? Like we said in episode 1, our relationship with the St. Louis County Police during the making of the first season of this show was not the best. The information officer at the time, Sergeant Benjamin Granda, became less and less willing to work with us as our investigation proceeded. After completing Season 1, a lawyer suggested to us that we make a document request of the department for anything mentioning my name or producer John Duffy's name. So we did, and we got back a handful of very interesting internal emails. John called me when he got the results.
There's emails in there from the ones where Sunshine, you and I, Brando, was making sure nobody talked to us, including at the crime lab and everything. In the warning he sent out to everybody, it was like, I don't believe these guys are on a real fact-finding mission, only to then say our questions are remarkably specific, you know?
Yeah.
And not like usual media questions. We're actually asking follow-up.
They just constantly expect he said, she said journalism, right?
Information Officer Sergeant Granda actually sent a department-wide memo informing other officers and staff of our email addresses and phone numbers, with the instructions not to speak to us. This was sparked by the fact that we had tried to directly contact the lead detective in the case we were investigating, Detective Timothy Anderer. We don't want to spoil Season 1 for people who want to go back and listen to it. So, for now, just know that according to the deceased young man's mother, Detective Anderer was very rude to her. And she believed that was because she was a well-known Ferguson movement activist. She thought this was confirmed by the fact that Detective Anderer had been caught assaulting black protesters and bragging about it on his own body camera.
If you get a copy of our report, it should have a list of, like, even the county guys that show up for, like, the crimes against persons and stuff.
Though the incident report from St. Louis County was missing a list of officers who responded to the scene of Darren's death, Chief Dominguez told us that Riverview PD has their own version of the incident report that would include that information, and we were welcome to come and collect a copy. That after the break.
Now, back to the show.
I remember specifically meeting Amir indictment night. We had been seeing each other, but indictment night, when they started shooting the tear gas, me and Amir went and got up on the top of a building. You remember that, Amir? We went across the street and got on the top of a building, and he was on the phone like, man, they're shooting tear gas at us. I can't believe this.
This is Darnell Singleton and Amir Brandy. Amir is co-founder of Real STL News, and his friend Darnell is a cinematographer. They recorded the interview with the man who lived in the Ridgeview Apartments, who described what he saw go down the night Darren was killed. We're sitting in their office, getting to know each other, and sharing stories about those chaotic nights back in 2014 when the protests in Ferguson were just kicking off.
I don't remember the exact moment that we met, but we were out there and, it was just, I don't know.
I don't know either.
You know what I mean? It was just one of those things like where you go to the protest and you see each other.
Yeah.
Like, what's up, man? What's happening next? Oh, I'm going downtown. I'm going too.
Yeah.
You know.
How did each of you meet and start to get to know Darren Seals?
I met Darren Seals on the protest. On the protest.
Darren was like one of the people that used to stand back and observe. He didn't say much in the field, if I could use that term.
I met him the first couple of days of the protest because, I had my camera out there and at nighttime I'd have my light on. Mm-hmm. And so maybe the second or third day, Spook was shot in the head. A protester was shot in the head. Mm-hmm. And Darren came over to me and he said, here, I want you to make sure you get this story out. Mm-hmm. That St. Louis County shot this girl in the head and they hid the bullet.
The woman Amir is talking about, who is referred to by the name Spook, is Maya Otten-White. After one of the protests in Ferguson, she was shot in the head by an unknown person.
I was like, who is Spook? You got to meet Spook. You got to talk to Spook. He was just adamant that, after Belmore said, after 5 days of protest, no protesters have been hurt. And Darren was livid. He was like, oh, the hell they haven't. This girl's in the hospital now. She's been shot in the head.
In the eye, wasn't it?
She was shot in the front of the head.
Yeah. I vaguely remember that.
And somehow the bullet magically disappeared when they removed it from her skull. And Darren was upset about that because, you know, that was a deliberate attempt to suppress what had happened to her.
What had really happened.
Yeah, and that's how I met Darren. You know, he came up to me and he was like, you got to get this out.
During the Ferguson protests, Darren Seals had been very critical of outsiders who he thought were trying to co-opt the movement for their own purposes, though it may seem counterintuitive to people not from St. Louis, especially so many years later. But in the early chaos that was the Ferguson Uprising, or what might be better simply referred to as the movement, Black Lives Matter was not an organic outgrowth of local activism. In fact, the people behind what was at the time a small and little-known organization, Black Lives Matter, was made up of outsiders. And Darren was very outspoken about how he felt about them.
Black Lives Matter is a bunch of computer nerds, Twitter activists. They don't do shit but tweet while we was in the streets, you know, turn shit up, you know, protest. They was just sitting back tweeting, Twitter fingers, you know. So you got a lot of people sending them money, turning them into stars. And if you notice, as it's blowing up, you're not hearing about Mike Brown anymore. You're not hearing about Darren Wilson anymore. You're not hearing about the Ferguson Police Department anymore. We're not hearing about none of this corrupt shit by McCullough, Jay Nixon. You're not hearing about none of this shit no more. All you're hearing about is Black Lives Matter now. They took the energy away from Ferguson. But they did it so intelligently, a lot of people didn't understand what was going on when it was going on, so they was helping these motherfuckers. Not even knowing, they stealing our shit, they stealing our shine. A lot of cats went to jail for us to be the main topic in the media. A lot of cats risked their life. Scoop got shot in the head. She could be dead right now. You know what I mean? A lot of shit happened for this shit to grow into what it became. There was an opportunity to really fight back and really make a change in Ferguson and Missouri as a whole. They just clearly got away with murder. Now they on to the next city, then the next city, then the next city, then the next city, being superstars off our shit we created here, while we sitting back still like, damn. Cops ain't stopped killing her since Mike Brown died. And what Black Lives Matter doing about it? They just collecting checks. I ain't heard of them paying for no funerals. I ain't heard of them starting no programs for the youth, building no centers, nothing. You know what I mean? So we back at square one, back where we started. No justice, no nothing.
Darren wasn't the only person in Ferguson who felt that outsiders were trying to co-opt the movement for their own purposes.
At some point, there was a strategic effort, and they pretty much took over the movement. They had a strategy of sending out signs that said Black Lives Matter. There was so much worldwide media there that people who were not able to actually participate, they associated the signs that they were seeing, Black Lives Matter. And this became a hustle because people were donating to what the signs that they seen. The people who were sitting at home, they didn't know that they were giving money to an organization that had little or nothing to do with the progress of change. The local activists who were in the meetings, having the discussions, they were the ones who actually did the work, but Black Lives Matter got the credit.
As founders of Black Lives Matter national organization were lesbian women, and as some of their more high-profile supporters online, like DeRay McKesson, were gay, Darren's criticism of the Black Lives Matter organization was often written off as homophobia. The antagonism between Darren and Black Lives Matter was even cited as a possible motivation behind his murder.
And in the aftermath of this, you've had people throwing accusations at black lesbians there in Ferguson, trying to blame them for his death as well. All of this just back and forth that's going on as people are trying to figure out what in the world happened.
Before his death, Darren took to the internet to respond to the people who claimed that he was homophobic.
I don't get nothing against them because they gay. I don't agree with the lifestyle of homosexuality, but I don't agree with a lot of shit people do. I'm not gonna dislike you because you do some shit I don't like. I'm pretty sure I do shit people don't like, I don't agree with, ain't healthy for me in their eyes. So, disagree on lifestyles, but they use that shit as a shield. When they doing all this bullshit, they try to come say, oh, he's just homophobic, he hated, man, my auntie been married to a woman since forever. So it ain't about that, but they'll use that to distract people, make them people think like, oh, don't take what he's saying serious because he just some homophobic thug nigga. He just, angry, all that.
In a sense, Darren's suspicions of the National Black Lives Matter organization were realized in January 2022, when an article in New York Magazine titled "The Murky Finances of Black Lives Matter" highlighted what many would call mismanagement of donated funds. Darren had complained in the videos he made that the big money flowing into Black Lives Matter hadn't been used to fund any community projects in Ferguson. According to the article, what is officially known as Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation is linked to a complex web of different nonprofits, for-profits, and political action committees, some of which are operated by high-ranking members of BLM. According to the article, there is a pattern of collecting donations from the public and then funneling them to the friends and family of people like BLM co-founder Patrisse Cullors.
Following the murder of George Floyd in 2020, supporters donated a staggering $90 million to Black Lives Matter. The nonprofit has spent most of that money, ending last year with a $9 million deficit. Federal filings from 2020 to 2022 show just a third, $30 million, went to other charitable organizations. $22 million went to expenses. This includes millions paid to board members and family members of co-founder Patrisse Cullors. For example, $1.6 million went to the father of Cullors' child for security services. Another $2.1 million went to BLM board member Shaloma Bowers for consulting.
According to the article, parents of Black children killed by police made public denouncements of the group's behavior, and this included Tamir Rice's mother, Samaria, and Mike Brown Jr.'s father, Mike Brown Sr.
One thing I always say about when you are an activist, a real activist, it doesn't stop. It's sort of like a sentence. You are concerned until it changes. And these people who have benefited don't seem to care anymore. We haven't seen some of them since 2014.
Given all that you've said, how do you think Darren would feel about someone who looks like me putting together a story around trying to solve his death? And how do you all feel about it?
Darren would probably be hot as donut grease. But at the end of the day, I think as long as the outcome is genuine, I think that he would be appreciative of it.
I listened to the series that you produced with Melissa, who is like a very dear friend of ours, and I appreciate the gentleness and the respect and just like the concern that you put into what you were doing. I think it helped heal her son. It really helped get her to a different place because Melissa was just devastated.
She was
not moving.
Though I wasn't fishing for a compliment, I was happy to hear that Darnell had listened to season 1 of our show, and that he trusted the earnestness with which we approached our work to find the truth, no matter what it reveals. And now, as a team, we were going to head to the crime scene.
It's a shortcut.
I'm going to slate this real fast. So we're rolling up to the crime scene for Darren Seals, and we are about to meet Darnell and Amir. So what's the shortcut?
There's a little side street. It's scary as freaking hell. You're going to have to go slow, though.
Okay. We're seeing
old manufacturing, scrap metal, old water towers, old train, bridge, brick from probably the 40s or earlier.
It looks like the kind of place you would drop a body. Kind of.
This is scary. Let me tell you this right here. Yeah. If you go down this hill, it's freaking scary as freaking hell. And there's no way out down there.
I'm assuming it's over there. That's just where the car was found. It was this parking lot.
When we arrived at the Ridgeview Apartments in Riverview, we walked around, taking in the scene, until Darnell and Amir showed up.
What do you know about this neighborhood, just generally?
This is a poor black neighborhood, and I think this is St. Louis County. I'm not sure.
It is.
Yeah, this is St. Louis County, but this would be considered on a scale of 1 to 10 in St. Louis County in terms of the living, probably a 2 or 3. You know, you could tell by the way you drove back here, most people can't even find it. It's in such a isolated part of the city, you know, and it's buttressed up against a forest, you know, and you drive down in here and it's a no man's land, you know, and the apartments now that were alive when Darren Seals were killed, you know, they're abandoned, it's all boarded up. It's very low income living, you know.
What reason, if any, could you imagine Darren would come to this spot?
I don't think Darren would come to this spot unless he knew somebody, you know. I think Darren was brought here, you know, after he was killed.
With Danye, they determined it was a suicide so we could get the reports. But as long as this remains an open crime, then they can just continue to withhold those reports because it's an open investigation. So my question is, did you guys ever hear how many bullets, you know, were found, and whether it was from the back of the head or front or side?
I never heard anything. Never heard a thing.
And the caliber or anything like that?
Mm-mm.
We got to reconstruct what would be in their report ourselves.
I think we did a better job of finding out what happened to Darren than the police did. You know, it was like we came out here, saw all of this stuff. Amir started working, other people started digging around and rooting around, and we kind of reconstructed the whole thing ourselves because we knew they weren't going to give us any kind of evidence. You know, we knew they weren't going to give us a good investigation because of the way that they left.
So the guy who saw it lived in 823, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was very scared to talk to the police. In fact, he told us he wasn't going to talk to the police, but that he would talk to us. And I guess he was about, 28, 29 years old. And he had been threatened, so he was really, really afraid.
By who?
Just some guys in the neighborhood.
So did he claim that some guys went and knocked on all the different neighbors' doors and made that threat, or did you ever get a sense of how he got that
Well,
threat?
I had posted the interview that he did with us online, and he inboxed me and told me, can you please take this down? They're threatening my life.
Somebody saw someone walk out of bushes. Which
I
bushes?
think he said that the guy came out of these bushes.
Yeah.
Down here.
These bushes.
Guy with ponytail.
White guy with ponytail?
White guy. He white or Spanish.
Okay.
It could have been either or.
We were standing around talking about the case when Amir shared some details with us that we hadn't yet heard.
At the location that he was called to, the kid explained that there were 2 people that got in the car with Darren. He said one got in the front seat, one got in the back. The guy in the back seat supposedly shot Darren in the back of the head with a .45. The guy who lived at that location, he told the 2 guys, y'all can't leave that body in front of my house.
According to Amir, he and Darnell had spoken to a source who told them that on the night he died, Darren had been summoned to some location, and at that location, 2 men got into his Jeep with him, one in the front seat and one in the back. According to their source, the man in the back seat shot Darren in the head. The source then claims that the owner of the home there told the killers that they could not leave the body in front of the house. And further still, Darnell and Amir think they might know where that location is.
Intelligence throughout the city indicated that Darren was killed in the 2800 block of Gamble, and his body was transported to this location.
The 2800 block of Gamble is in St. Louis City. Though we don't know where he got this specific address, it does at least line up with what Chief Dominguez told us. And Amir had one more clue he wanted to share.
In our homework, we found that there was another kid mysteriously killed and found in the middle of the street in the 2800 block of Gamble. We could never put Darren with this other kid. So we assume that this kid, seen what happened.
If the second fact that another person was killed at the same time in the same place as Darren was true, then we thought that if we could find this second victim, we could begin confirming the details given by Amir and Darnell's anonymous source. Our first attempt to do this, you heard at the beginning of episode 1. We simply drove to the 2800 block of Gamble Street in St. Louis, began knocking on doors, asking if anyone remembered anything about these killings, but no one had anything they wanted to share with us. After searching through old news reports, we were able to find that there was a killing on that night at the address Amir had given us.
Breaking overnight, one person is dead after a shooting in North St. Louis. It happened just before 1 in the 2800 block of Gamble Street. St. Louis police say a man in his early 20s was found shot in the head.
The victim's name is Shaun Hawkins. Not only was his killing on the same night and at roughly the same time as Darren's, but as it turns out, Shaun Hawkins looked fairly similar to Darren Seals. Not identical, of course, but they both had long dreads, and we wondered if maybe Shaun's killing was a case of mistaken identity, and that perhaps he'd been shot by someone who at a distance in the dark thought he was Darren. More after the break. Now, back to the show. In running down the story about Shaun Hawkins, we reached out to the St. Louis Metropolitan Police to get a copy of the incident report in regards to his death. And fortunately for us, we found that one of the responding officers to that crime scene was Heather Taylor, the former head of the Ethical Society of Police, more casually known in St. Louis as the Black Police Union. As I already had an existing relationship with Heather, I called her to see if she could remember anything about Shaun Hawkins' murder.
We could send you what we did receive from our sunshine request, and if we provided that to you, would you be able to recall anything that you saw? Or
first off, I would have to get approval for any interview. I didn't know this was about an interview and a radio or whatever's going on with the podcast. I would have to get permission for an interview. I'm no longer in a position where I'm the president of Ethical and I can give interviews as I want. On top of it, I would not ever give an interview based off of assumptions and theory.
I told Heather I didn't want her to speculate on anything, but rather just try and recall what she could from the crime scene that night.
And I understand it may be minimal of what you can offer, but the things that we're interested in, questions, where was blood found? Was blood found other than the doorstep where Shaun Hawkins was found?
I would say that the police report, if I was on the scene of the incident, the police report documents the facts that we received, the interviews that we received. Interviews are recorded, crime scenes are videotaped and recorded. They're photographed, and that's the evidence.
Unfortunately, as Shaun Hawkins' murder is still an open case, we were never able to get anything like what Heather is talking about. We did make 2 official requests to interview Heather, but both were ignored. So in trying to better understand the context of Shaun Hawkins' murder, we turned to Facebook and looked up one of Shaun Hawkins' neighbors who was listed in the incident report, Monique Griffin. She was only willing to talk via Facebook Messenger. Here are excerpts from a conversation she had with our producer, Mallory Kenoy. Mallory is reading her side, and an AI is reading as Monique.
We would love to know what was happening before the incident and how you knew Script.
Script was Shaun's nickname.
I was in bed. It was 11, 12-ish when the shooting started to happen. He was a friend that stayed next door.
Did you get a sense there was an investigation and follow-up by police or any leads on suspects?
No, I moved immediately. I had small children at the time, and everything I owned was damaged. I didn't want my kids in that type of environment.
Have you ever met a man named Darren Seals?
No, I have not. Is that the guy who got killed, who threw the tear gas at police?
No, that was Edward Crawford, but Darren was another prominent activist. Is there anyone else you think I should talk to about it, who may have more info about why the shooting occurred?
No, I don't. It was all unexpected, love. All I know is we heard shooting and bullets started flying everywhere, all through the apartments. And cars got real quiet. In about 5 minutes, I opened my door, and he was lying on the porch, bleeding from his head. And I immediately called police and got my kids away from the scene. That's all the details I have to give.
So all we have to go on are Monique's statements and the incident report, which gives us these details. For one, they say the report of the crime came in at 12:48 a.m. They claim an automatic firearm was used. Under a box marked gang-related, they wrote the word no, which makes us wonder how they would even have known that. After noting the one killed person is Shaun Hawkins, the report then lists a number of individuals as victims, mostly children. And we presume these are all people inside the apartment structure who could have been harmed by the many bullets fired. Now, it's an 18-minute drive from the site of Shaun Hawkins' killing on Gamble Street to the Ridgeview Apartments in Riverview, where Darren's body was found. And according to the incident report on Darren's death, that crime was called in at 1:18 a.m. So the timing does work out. But seeing that it was an automatic weapon used in Shaun Hawkins' killing, and his neighbor Monique described it as a situation in which bullets were flying everywhere, it doesn't seem to align with how we presume Darren would have been killed. For instance, Darren's Jeep was never described as riddled with bullet holes. So had he been killed in a hail of automatic gunfire, it couldn't have been while he was in his car. So his body would have to have been carried from wherever it was into his car, which then would have to have been driven from that location to where it was eventually burned. That seemed like a lot of work for someone who was otherwise spraying bullets with an automatic firearm. We needed more information, and we hoped we would get it from the Riverview Police Department's incident report regarding Darren's murder. Though it didn't tell us anything more about the possible Gamble Street connection, it did reveal something that we found important.
Ray?
Yes.
So, you're going to freak the hell out.
Uh-huh.
That's who one of the corresponding officers is.
Who?
You're going to shit in your pants.
Is it Anderer?
Fuck yeah.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding you. I saw that I had to keep a straight face.
Wow.
After finding that Detective Timothy Anderer was sent by the St. Louis County Police to investigate Darren's murder, we wondered whether the reason the incident report they gave us omitted the names of all the responding officers was an attempt to make sure that we didn't know that there was a connection between Detective Anderer and Darren Seals' homicide investigation. We called the St. Louis County Police to find out who the current lead detective on Darren's case was.
I'll give you his name, but do not reach out to him directly, or I can tell you you won't get much out of our office ever again, because we don't like to make our detectives mad. We don't want reporters reaching out directly to them because they're busy with their caseload and everything. But
Right.
It's Detective Justin Adams.
Justin Adams.
ADAMS, yeah. Detective Adams has this case, so if he wants us to push any information out on it, I'm happy to do that, or if he has time to talk to you guys, but I'll touch base with him today on it, okay?
Finding that Detective Anderer was one of the first investigators to respond on the night Darren was killed, and then noting everything claimed and documented by people who witnessed that crime scene the following day. The burned door from Darren's Jeep still lying on its side. The blue latex gloves worn by police, left scattered amongst other debris. We wondered if one didn't explain the other. We were happy to hear that the case is not with Anderer, but a Detective Adams, who wasn't listed as having responded that first night. We hoped he wasn't so outwardly disrespectful to black activists, as Anderer had been. With so little information available via police documents, if we wanted to settle the question of where Darren was actually shot, we would need to go straight to the people who had been some of the last to see Darren alive. And that's next time on After the Uprising. After the Uprising is a production of Double Asterisk and iHeart Podcasts in association with True Stories. Season 2 was written, reported, and produced by Maria Chappelle Nadal, John Duffy, Mallory Kenoy, and Ray Novoselsky. Executive producers are Nikki Ator and Lindsay Hoffman for iHeart Podcasts, John Duffy and Ray Novoselsky for Double Asterisk, David Cassidy and Ruth Vaca for True Stories. Directed by John Duffy and Ray Novoselsky. Theme song and score by Zachary Walter. Sound engineering and mix by John Autry. Fact-checking by Muffin Humes. Marketing by Allison Cantor. Fair Use Legal by Peter Yazzie and Brandon Butler. Legal by Holly DeCan for iHeart Podcasts and Keith Sklar for Double Asterisk. Missouri Sunshine Legal by David Rowland. Show logo by iHeart Podcasts using a photo by Attilio D'Agostino. Our interns were Hannah Madura and Rosemary Feary. Website by Stephanie Clark. Recorded at David Weber's Airtime Studios in Bloomington, Indiana. We want to acknowledge additional investigation that became part of this podcast was conducted by Detective Adams in the St. Louis County Police and the FBI, who did not participate in this podcast, and by Amir Brandy, Mosi Secret, and Darnell Singleton. If you like our work, check out our other podcasts. You can find us at doubleasteriskmedia.com and on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Support us on Patreon. If you're enjoying the show, leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast app. Thank you to Jamie Dennis, Danny Gonzalez, Jonathan Hartwig, Beth Ann Macaluso, Matt McDonough, Melissa McKinnis, Ryan Mears, Tony and Val Novoselsky, and the family and loved ones of Darren Seals. Bottom Boys and DOA tracks used via fair use. So was the news reporting archival. Copyright 2024 Double Asterisk Inc.